All right, I'm live. Okay, let's see if that actually is true. All right, Pepper, I think I'm live, so let's see. It says I'm live. Let's see. Okay, you're coming
Wait,
into.
so can they see me?
They can. Let's see. Let's see if this actually works. All right, I think it actually is working.
Okay, well, can I say something?
Yeah. All right. Here's Pepper. So we're live. All right. Hold on. Before you say something, I love you and you're awesome. Go turn on the light so we can get a little more light in here. All right. Hello, everyone. Anchorpete fans. This is live, which is nice. I'm looking over at my other computer that's showing YouTube, and it's looking a little choppy. Apologize for that. And maybe this will just eventually, when it gets on my channel, just be a picture of Wonder Woman, and it'll be me talking. But we're going to talk about Wonder Woman 1984, and my daughter Pepper is going to give her 2 cents. First and foremost, just so you know, this has Wonder Woman 1984 spoilers. So if you have not seen Wonder Woman 1984, just go watch it on HBO Max. I'm sure you got a subscription. And now Pepper here is going to spoil it. So go ahead.
What?
So
Can you ask me some questions?
I 1,000% can ask you some questions. Here we go. I'm just so excited that my freaking computer's working. So Pepper, you ready? Don't worry about this one. There's like a little delay. It looks horrible. Look at this one right here, okay? All right, you ready? So Pepper, if you could give it on a scale from 1 to 10, Wonder Woman 1984, what number would you give it?
1 to 10?
Yeah.
7.5.
7.5. Okay. She's giving it a half a point more than her dad would. Why are you giving it a 7.5?
I thought it was a good movie, and I liked the cast and stuff.
Yeah.
But some parts, because it was about this magical Wishstone thing,
Yeah.
they just didn't really go into that, and it got me sort of confused about what was going on.
Yes.
And I thought they should have added more details on that.
Yeah. Okay. Good. And did you like Gal Gadot's performance in this movie? Did you like it as much as the one in the original Wonder Woman movie? Wonder Woman?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I might like this one better. Yeah, they added another girl, and I liked Gal Gadot's performance. But in the first Wonder Woman movie, I don't know. I feel like she's in more character. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like she did a better job. Where she was in the trenches in the first Wonder Woman movie, and she just made you inspired.
Ooh, good point. Okay. Is there any more that you'd like to add? Because Daddy's going to take over and ramble at these people.
Yeah.
Good.
I didn't really like how they made Cheetah into a bad guy. Because if y'all see in the movie, she's a sweet girl and stuff. And they just made her bad. And also, at the end of the movie, she was going crazy with wish power. And you should have seen what they did to her. She was like a furry, weird human hybrid with a cheetah. She wished for greatness and power and stuff, but she looks really weird, and it's not good.
Okay. All right. Well, good. All right. So 7.5. You liked Barbara Minerva, who becomes Cheetah. You just don't like the fact that she became a cheetah woman because of her wishes. Didn't make sense to you.
No.
And you were kind of bothered by the wishes in general.
Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't in the movie. It's people wishing, so how would she get the cheetah fur and stuff? I'm just asking, who has cheetah fur out there that they stole?
I have an answer. She says when she's on that helicopter, she says, I want to be like the apex predator. I want to be unlike anybody else, right? So I think that she was kind of envisioning, because when people would make their wishes, it was like a deep thing that they were thinking about, right? That it was very personal to them. I think that she probably envisioned a cheetah monster herself, right? So I think that was her vision of the biggest badass was this apex predator cheetah woman.
Yeah.
That's my take.
Okay.
That's good? Okay, now Pepper's leaving and she's like, I'm getting the hell out of here. Now you guys are stuck with me. Okay, so let's talk about Wonder Woman 1984. I'm so happy, because I literally with myself and I was getting depressed. And now you are here and I'm talking to you about Wonder Woman 1984. I'm super excited. So Pepper said she gave it a 7.5. I gave it a 7. You want to know why? Because I actually really like the first Wonder Woman movie. I do. I think that overall, every scene in it would get an 8, right, out of 10, right? And then there's that one trench scene that Pepper just referenced. And it's this phenomenal scene. And I was just watching that scene with Pepper a couple of days ago because we just watched the first one, and I was crying. I was really holding in that. I was almost going to freaking sob. That's how much I love that trench scene. because it's so good. It's so well done. It's just like, let me give you an example, okay? Because you're stuck here with me. On a wire, and he's dropping him down to the ground. He's intimidating him. And then the guy flat's hanging upside down and says, I told you everything. I swear to God. And that is Batman. Do you understand? And in Man of Steel, like when the oil tanker is crashing and Clark grabs and he picks it up, like that's super. I have a lot of good examples of what Batman is like, and then the Joker is like. And in the original Wonder Woman, that trench scene, that is Wonder Woman. She's inspiring others. She's this mythical figure. She sees an injustice in the world. She wants to make the world a better place. And so she inspires us, just like Superman inspires us, right? And Batman, in his way, inspires us. The big three, right? The Trinity of DC. And that's why I love Wonder Woman the original, because it has that one scene in it. And even if it just had that scene in it, that alone would be worth the ticket. Now, the first movie, we'll get to the second one in a second. The first movie has this great chemistry between Chris Pine and Gal Gadot, too. They just really work well together. It's really great, them getting to know each other, and he's trying to explain the world of man to her. And she's pointing out all the weird, contradictions that we have in our regular world. Great stuff, right? And you really feel for her when he dies at the end, okay? Now, they try to build upon that in 1984, and they bring back that chemistry between Chris Pine and Gal Gadot. And that's a good thing about Wonder Woman 1984. But what I think is making me give this a 7 out of 10, which with the original Wonder Woman, I would probably give it like a 8 or an 8.5 out of 10, is because it's something I've seen a lot of people complain about in general, right? A lot of people say that this movie is a mess. Now, I think 1984 is not a mess. That's too harsh to say, right? But there's definitely something off with the internal logic of this movie, right? As I was talking to myself and doing just a Zoom call, recording myself, one of the things I was saying was that the majority of these new DC movies have a focus on magic. And that's okay, right? Because when you look at these DC characters, they are from the 1930s, right? And they're from decades ago. Like, yeah, sure, Superman's from another planet. Batman doesn't use magic at all. But Wonder Woman is, like, based right out of Greek mythology, right? She always has been, no matter how much they change her origin, right? And all of their contemporaries, like the original Green Lantern, Hawkman, Dr. Fate, all these guys that came out the same time as they did, they all have magical origins. The original Green Lantern has a magical origin, right? Marvel comes around in the 60s and everything is sci-fi. Spider-Man, sci-fi. Fantastic Four is obviously sci-fi, right? And DC goes to compete with them, and they make science fiction origins for Green Lantern and the Flash and Hawkman too. He's from outer space now, right? And my point is that, like, with the science fiction origins, it's much easier for us to grasp because science fiction is based upon our reality, right? But with magic, you really have to explain how the magic works in order for us to believe in the stakes of the movie, right? Like, obviously, this is, and my wife just said this a couple, before I started filming this. She was saying that she felt like the movie was geared for young girls, just like Pepper, right? But good, right? I want young girls to love this movie, to love this character, and to get into comics, right? And I don't want to be an almost 40-year-old white guy being like, oh, the internal logic doesn't, like, no. There's a reason why I'm complaining about this. Because as you can see, my 10-year-old daughter said that the wishing didn't make sense, right? That's what my wife said too. Like, it just got very confusing with Maxwell Lord and this Wishstone, this Dreamstone, right? So that was a big rant. But what I'm trying to get at is you can use magic with superheroes. It works, right? But you need to, like, firmly establish and make it very simple when it comes to movies, because you only have 2 hours, 2.5 hours to tell your story. It has to be very simple and streamlined how this magic works, how, this will be the consequence for using the magic, and this is why it's bad to use the magic, this is why it's good to use the magic. You have to just explain that very concisely, right? Otherwise, it's just a mess. And see, I use that mess term. Otherwise, it's just confusing, right? It's not as satisfying. Okay, so I'm going to tell you right now my major gripe and how it ties into what I was just rambling about. So Maxwell Lord does a thing that I was not anticipating. Usually I can predict comic book movies pretty early on. Oh, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this guy's going to do this. I can usually predict the scenes, right? Because I've seen so many of them, read so many freaking comics. But one thing in 1984 that threw me for a loop was that when Maxwell Lord got his hands on this Wishstone, this Dreamstone, he made a wish to become the stone. And I was like, what? That threw me for a loop. I was like, what the hell? And so he became the stone himself, and he started granting everyone's wishes. I was not expecting that. And it was interesting. But they never established, they hinted at, but they never like came out straight and established, okay, when Max grants someone a wish, he takes something from them. Okay? Like it's heavily implied, but there's never like a moment where someone's like, or he turns to someone, he says, you know, I am going to grant these people their wishes so that I can get this. You know, he kind of rambles and says things and you pick it up, but it's not clear enough. And I always hate exposition. I hate when a movie halts to explain something, but when you're dealing with magic, you do have to halt and explain something because it's not something that someone can infer. You're making up new rules, so you need to tell us the rules, okay? We can't just guess, okay? So there's that, and that like he's sort of like decomposing because the magic is, or the granting the wishes takes a toll on him, right? That's inferred too. So it's confusing, right? Like, why is he doing this? Why does he need to touch people why does he need to touch a lot of people to restore his own health? He kind of explains it, but then, you know, he doesn't. It's just confusing, right? At the end of the movie, the way to resolve this whole situation is that people have to renounce their wishes. Diana renounces her wish, which makes Steve Trevor go away, right? And her powers come back. So the price that she paid doesn't matter anymore. She gets her powers back, right? Everyone renounces their wishes around the world, and things go back to the way they were prior to Max Lord having this stone. Except they don't. This is my main problem with the movie. Like, the stone itself, they explain, when they do have some exposition, they explain that the stone itself was made by some kind of trickster god, which they never outright say, like, it's this god from DC Comics. They just mention a couple of the gods you don't recognize the names of, right? And they say this god always wants to, like, trick people, and that when this stone shows up in societies, those societies fall, right? So the idea is that Maxwell Lord granting wishes to everyone around the world is going to make all of human society fall. And we see this throughout the movie. It's just like, it's building up to the apocalypse. It's building up to World War III. The stakes are getting very high. Well, when you get to a movie where you're not going to change the status quo, where you're not going to have the apocalypse, when things get too far, you have to have a scene where, like, it goes back to the way that it was before, right? Because otherwise you've gone to another world. You've created another world. What the hell am I saying? Let me explain. There's nukes that are launched from Russia, and I think maybe from the United States, but Russia definitely sends nukes over to the United States, right? And there are riots everywhere. There are people dying, and everyone is aware that magic is happening in this world. The nukes are about to hit the United States. Maxwell Lord renounces his wish, and the nukes, like, disintegrate. Okay, so the chaos ends, and Max runs out and he finds his son that he has been neglecting the whole movie, and he says, I've been such a loser. It's so wrong of me to do this. And the wreckage of everything that's been happening is still around him. Now, when you do like a reset in a movie, when it gets to that point where it's like too far, like, oh, the nukes are going to hit, the world's going to end, you look around and the world just like looks the way that it did prior to the chaos. Like, if he renounced his wish, you would think the next scene would be that like the movie's kind of like back at the beginning and the stone is in place again, and like Max never got his hands on the stone. Here he never made his wish, right? It's not like that. It's like everything happened, including the nukes being launched, but that the chaos was stopped. And to me, that just really bothers me. Because first off, it just really bothers me because it's like, okay, well, you essentially are like changing the whole world. Like, how could the world go back to normal after that, right? But more importantly, what bothers me is that this movie is supposed to take place in this DC shared universe. Now, here I am once again, like, oh, pasty-faced white guy, you know, comic book fan complaining about comic book movies. Jesus, don't we have enough of those guys, right? I don't care about continuity for the sake of continuity. What I care about is that as fans and as the people that have been working in comics, right, and the people that have been working in comic-related media for generations, when you get to a comic book movie, right, when you get to the Marvel universe, for instance, that's like the pinnacle. That's what everybody wants. Everybody that's like me, we want the world to know how freaking awesome all this stuff is. We want all of you to just come into the DC universe and see, like, look how cool this is. This is what I've been loving my whole life, you know, and I want you to love it too. I want you to enjoy this too, right? That's what we want. And they got it right with Marvel. They got all the way up to Endgame, and they haven't dropped the baton yet. And it's a fully functional world, man. And there are like millions of people, literally millions of people, that know characters that I would have never thought that people would know or care about when I was growing up, right? Because they did it well with Marvel. And we get so frustrated with DC because, like, it's what I said before about, like, The Dark Knight and the Batman Begins and that trench scene in Wonder Woman. That's when they show the characters the right way. That's when they capture what's amazing about those characters. Like what I grew up loving in Batman the Animated Series and the Justice League cartoon, and then like for Marvel, like the X-Men cartoons and all that kind of stuff, right? Like that's when they capture what we love about these characters. And with DC, I don't know why. I don't know why they don't have like a single person that's just making this all cohesive. Because it becomes a world that everyone can enjoy when there's consistency. And there's not even consistency between this Wonder Woman and the Wonder Woman movie that it is the sequel to. Because they're making it like, you know, she's flying around and the whole world almost ended in 1984. But yet in the epilogue of the first movie, she's just working at the Louvre and people don't really know who she is, right? I can accept that maybe the idea is that like, oh, well, she kind of goes into hiding after that. And like people just kind of write off that they saw this woman running around. That was Wonder Woman, right? But the whole thing of like the world almost ending, that just doesn't make any sense to me. So my point I'm trying to say is like, it's a well-made movie. It's a fun movie, right? But there's just more that can be done to make it be a part of a bigger tapestry. And I understand when there's so many people involved and so much money involved, that might not be the highest priority for a team of people or a high executive or whoever is making these decisions, right? But with Marvel, there was somebody that was like, the buck stops here. This is what we're making. We're making this. And it's paid off for them like in the billions, you know, because they're able to convey this is this world. And these are the rules of this world. And you can go to this world by watching this movie, right? But DC just can't do it, man. And boy, I mean, I sound like one of those freaks, like they're like, you know, they're like, leave Britney Spears alone or whatever, you know, like, just, I know. I'm just ranting because this is the thing that I love. I love it so much. I love DC Comics more than I love Marvel, and I love Marvel very much. And I just wish they could just get it right. And this movie, like, comes so freaking close to getting it right, but it stumbles, you know? And Pepper mentioned Cheetah. I'm just going to, like, kind of do a couple of minor points, but like my main point that I'm trying to get at is it's just its own logic doesn't make sense in the movie, right? And like it just doesn't feel like it's part of something bigger. Like you can be a lesser quality movie if you are part of something bigger, like you're working towards something. But to just kind of like almost be like, oh, the other stuff doesn't matter and we're going to do our own thing. But then even in our own thing, we're not going to make that much sense. I don't know. That's why it gets a lower mark for me, right? Okay. So anyway, let's just talk about some other things. I love Kristen Wiig, right? I love Kristen Wiig. And guys, I actually forgot the name of the guy that plays the Mandalorian. I'm so sorry. I think it's Pedro Pascal, but if I got that wrong, I'm sorry. I love him in the Mandalorian. He is fantastic, right? Like just his little inflections, his voice, the way he delivers things, fantastic. I do think that like Kristen Wiig and I think Pedro Pascal are like wrongly cast in this movie. They're great. They deserve roles like this, but I don't. It's just like his Max Lord is like too kind of goofy, right? Too silly, over the top, and her Cheetah. Like Kristen Wiig is a very beautiful woman, right? But like one of the main parts of this character in this movie, in this version of Cheetah, is that she's like this like super sexy, attractive woman. And I just think that like you would kind of need someone that is just inherently like sexy. I know Kristen Wiig can be sexy too. I'm not trying to default her, but I'm just saying you have to do that kind of cliche Hollywood thing where it's like you have the clearly attractive, awesome looking person, and that when they get to show their true selves, then it like they're covered in glasses and mouth, like made all mousy, and then they come out, right? I mean the clear obvious answer or example is Michelle Pfeiffer in Batman Begins or Batman Returns, sorry, when she's Selena Kyle. They have her with the hair in a bun and she's all mousy and all fidgety and nervous. And that's kind of what Kristen Wiig is like in the beginning of this movie. But then she becomes Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman, right? And like that's, I think, what they're trying to do with Cheetah in this movie. And it just doesn't, it's not that, right? And Kristen Wiig is an excellent actress. She's extremely funny. But her capacity to be funny, it's only needed in the beginning of the movie, and then the rest of the movie is being like serious and like a seductress and like intimidating, and that's not her strengths. You need someone that's their strengths, and then the awkwardness can come in the beginning, right? I'll say one last thing and then I'll wrap this up because boy, I probably sound like a freaking lunatic. But my last thing I was gonna say is that there are really amazing looking set pieces in this movie, right? There are a bunch of scenes that are almost as good as the trench scene in the first movie, but they fall short, right? And I'm going to explain those in 1 second, but what I'm talking about with the set pieces is there's some great action beats. There's this really fun moment in the mall in the beginning of the movie. Looks great. Love that moment, right? Then there's this like car chase sequence in Saudi Arabia or some Middle Eastern country, or Bialia, right? It's like a made-up DC country, right? And they are like amazing to look at. Very well shot. Like the cinematography is great. The editing is great. Everything is beautiful. Looks awesome. But every single action piece just feels like this is here because we need an action piece in the movie. Like Maxwell Lord goes over to the Middle East to get the power from another oil baron that he's trying to, like, that's his rival, right? And it just feels like that's only happening so that you can have this kind of exotic action piece in the Middle East. Otherwise, it's, like, why is it there? And it's great to watch, and it's kind of thrilling, right? But it just feels like it's just there because we need an action piece, right? And the whole setup with Cheetah, it's just like, oh, we have to have Cheetah in this movie and we have to have a battle with Cheetah. That's fine. The end battle with her is good, right? But it just feels like we're just doing this because Wonder Woman has to fight Cheetah. And I know you could say for millions of comic book movies, yeah, that's the case. But we're dealing with like Wonder Woman. This is like an iconic character, right? Like DC, they're slacking with their newest versions of Batman, their newest versions of Superman, and Wonder Woman. Like, this should be like, it's just easy money, right? So like, you already got millions of dollars, maybe billions of dollars just having the character, right? So you need to go a step further because you need to make this be better than what we've seen before. And you just can't have scenes where it's like, oh, well, this has to be the scene where Wonder Woman fights Cheetah, right? In that scene where Wonder Woman fights Cheetah, Wonder Woman has this armor from this Amazon warrior, legendary Amazon warrior, and it's got the wings, and we've seen it all in the trailers, right? And she's using the armor, like the wings from the armor, to protect herself from Cheetah's claws. And it's great. I mean, clearly, if Wonder Woman didn't have this armor, Cheetah would have shredded her to pieces. Well, Cheetah's like cutting through the armor, and you can see from Wonder Woman's perspective, like you can see through the slats in the armor that Cheetah's slashing at her. That was like one of the best things in the whole movie. I love that sequence. I love that mall sequence. I love that sequence where she's fighting with Cheetah. And I love this last sequence I'm going to talk about right here. The invisible jet sequence. Right? So with the invisible jet, here's the deal. Everyone knows that Wonder Woman has an invisible jet in her mythology, like her comic, mythology, right? And so it's like, well, how do we stick that in there, right? And in the history of the movie, it makes sense because her father made the island of Themyscira invisible, right? So she's a descendant of Zeus. She should be able to make something invisible. Sure, that's fine. There'll be tons of comic book fans that are sitting there and being like, "Oh, you can't. Wonder Woman can't do that." Oh, who cares, right? Good. But it just feels like the setup for that sequence is Wonder Woman needs to make an invisible jet. That's why this happens. She like has access to a hangar that has a bunch of jets in it. She waves up a card that gives her access, but yet, even though she has access, she's not allowed to take the jet because then it's like she's stealing it. So it just that kind of doesn't make sense, right? So that it just felt like, once again, like, okay, well, we need to work the invisible jet into the movie. How do we do that? So that's where my critiques. I think Gal Gadot is good in this. I think that like she has a better opportunity sort of doing that fish out of water stuff in the first movie, and that's what makes her really seem extra charming in the first movie. But you still root for her. You still feel inspired by her in this movie. And you certainly feel her pain towards not having Steve Trevor, right? Chris Pine is great in it as Steve Trevor, who is like out of time. And the roles are reversed. He does a fantastic job too. So, I mean, that's basically all I have to say about this movie. But like, please don't take it that I'm complaining like, oh, it's not the world building. Like, there's a reason why the world building is so important to us, even though some people might choose to like say negative things or hurtful things where they're complaining about it. It's just like, we love these worlds. Like, we love them so much. That's where we go. Like, that's our imagination. It brings us there, right? And we want you guys to enjoy it too. And if you change little details in movies just to make it work in a movie, good, right? Like, who cares? But just make it make sense, And all the Wish shit with Maxwell Lord, it just, believe me, I try to justify shit as much as I can, and I couldn't make it work. I was like, what? I like, when I left, I was like, what is going on here? So that's it. That's my rant about Wonder Woman 1984. Thank you so much for watching. And please, in the comments, just let me know what you thought about the movie too. All right. For my channel, for my Anchorpete channel, I have like 2 videos coming up about comic books that I read in 2020. One is the G.I. Joe comic written by Paul Allure, and another one is about a comic called Triage, which I'm going to review both of those, and there'll be 2 videos. And then for the Lacercast, Danny should have a video on The Stand, episode 2, and maybe not before New Year's, but coming up, we're going to have a review of the best horror movies of 2020, in our opinions. So, obviously check out Anchorpete, check out, the Lacercast, right? And we just always appreciate your attention. All right, guys, have a good one. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. And awkwardly, I leave.